Farm prenups. This isn't something that most people like to talk about or even think about, but it can be an important part to protect your farm and your farm succession plan. Watch this video to learn more. Hi, I'm Jason Wagner, the farm lawyer. I work with family farmers every single day to help them pass the farm on to the next generation. At my law firm, Wagner Ayler, we've been doing it for over 50 years. So farm prenups, this is something that I talk with a lot of farmers about, especially as either they are looking at getting married or their kids are looking at getting married. And marriage is a wonderful thing, but we have to also take that into context with what we know are a lot of challenges. Farming has never been an easy lifestyle, and it's certainly not getting any easier. There's a lot of stress involved, the finances, the long hours. And, if we have our farming heir getting married to somebody that hasn't grown up like that, or even if they have, that can put strain on a marriage. So this is a situation where, of course, we want to be hoping for the best, but planning for the worst. So what is a prenup? Well, it is a premarital contract that two people enter into before the wedding. They are basically saying, we're about to get married. We know that there's certain default standards on how assets are divided in the event of our divorce. We know that each of us have certain rights to the other person's estate in the event of death, but we're going to go ahead and actually change what the default rules are in this prenuptial agreement. Why would we do that? Because it's important for us to protect the farm. This can come up in the context of a farm or a business. There's a lot of asset value tied up in the farm. There's going to be significant discounts or gifts or inheritances when it comes to the farm. We want to keep those as non-marital assets and make sure they don't become a target in the event of a divorce. And we're not saying to our future son or daughter-in-law, we don't trust you, or that we think that you're going to take the farm. We're saying, in order for us to be confident and have this farm be successful, we need to know that, that we've got this safeguard in place. So it's helpful to give us some background on what is marital property and what is non-marital property. Starting out, the property that you bring into a marriage is generally going to be non-marital property. So if I own a farm and I own that before we got married, I bring that into the marriage, that's going to be non-marital property. If I receive an inheritance, that's going to be non-marital property. If I get a gift from somebody and it's only to me, that's non-marital property. What about marital property? Well, anything that we acquire as a married couple is going to, by default, be marital property. Any income that I receive during our marriage is going to be considered marital property. And potentially, think about that farm again that I owned before coming into the marriage. Maybe I have debt on it. Maybe it's, 50% loan to value. As I pay down that debt, I'm using marital assets, income that I received during the marriage to pay that debt. So a portion of that farm could now be marital property, even though a portion of it is non-marital property. Likewise, I could easily take some property that I received as an inheritance. Let's say it's cash. Maybe I get a gift or of inheritance of $100,000. But I don't put that in an account with just my name on it. I put it in a joint account with me and my wife. Automatically, now that's been converted to marital property. So that line between marital property and non-marital property can blur quite a bit, depending on when we acquired the asset, how we're paying for the asset, and how it's titled, or if I retitled it. What a prenup does is it basically kind of resets the standard. We're going to keep all property as non-marital property unless we intentionally, in writing, convert it to marital property. So the prenup is going to allow us to reset those terms, give us a baseline. Some people think, hey, if I put in there that my spouse gets nothing, then my spouse won't get anything when I die. And I think it's important to remember that the prenup just gives us a baseline. It doesn't mean that's exactly how you have to do it. You're not like tied into disinheriting your spouse now. It's just that you're also not obligated to do something that you don't want to do, that marital law might require you to do. So let's break this down really in the example of a farm. So we've got our farming heir, and he's about to get married. And we know that we plan to gift him some ownership in the farm, or maybe we already have. Maybe our farm estate plan says that he's going to inherit a good chunk of the farm or all of it. So, what we want to do is make sure in our prenup we're specifically stating that not only is the ownership in the farm that I own now going to be non-marital property, but all future ownership in that farm is also going to stay and be non-marital property. So we've got, let's say it's Family Farm LLC. Any gifts of Family Farm LLC are going to be treated 100% as farming heirs non-marital property. Any income that Family Farm LLC generates is going to be 100% non-marital property. Any future investments in Family Farm LLC will stay non-marital property. If we have any debt in Family Farm LLC, that's going to be non-marital property too. We're not going to, in the event of divorce, try to push off half the debt to our spouse. That's going to stay with the farm, stay as non-marital property. So now what we've done is we've wrapped a bubble around our family farm and our Family Farm LLC. And in the event of a divorce, we've got clear documentation that we intended to do gifting, that this is the asset we intend to gift, and that will stay as non-marital property. Therefore, our divorcing spouse cannot come in and grab a piece of the farm. Now, in all instances, it's going to come down to the facts. Was this a fair agreement? Are we leaving our divorcing spouse completely high and dry? That's not going to be an outcome that most courts will support. But the prenuptial agreement gives us solid baseline. So now we're coming from a place of strength of protecting the farm rather than having to defend it. This can also come up in the context of death. If we've got, maybe you've got yourself and you've got a couple kids, they're all on the farm together, and there's a lot of co-ownership, there's a lot of cross-ownership of assets. We don't want to have to necessarily buy out a widow or a widower at a huge fair market value. The farm can't afford to buy itself over and over again. So we'll have a buy-sell agreement. Here's what will happen in the event of death. If one of you dies, or if I die, we're going to have a fixed value or a formula for buying out that person's interest. And you can bet it's going to be a discounted value or a hugely discounted value. It may be supported by life insurance, which will help get some more assets to the family of the deceased farmer. But again, we don't want a situation where a widow or widower can come in and say, that buy-sell agreement that you put together is so patently unfair to me that I'm going to sue for a difference. Nope. We already have a prenup in place. You don't get to sue for a difference. You don't get to come back for more, because our prenup already says you're actually not entitled to anything out of this farm. And instead, we've got a buy-sell agreement that says, we'll buy you out at a discounted basis. We want to make sure you're taken care of. So we think about the protections in the event of a divorce or death for a farm successor or a farming heir, and it's really a spectrum. The prenup gives us strong protection and a baseline. Our buy-sell agreement is there to back that up. We can always have the spouse consent to that buy-sell, but having a prenup in place just gives us that stronger protection. We're closer on the protective side of the spectrum than over here where we have nothing. We don't have a prenup, we don't have a buy-sell, we don't even have a will. We don't know what's going to happen with the farm if something happens to one of our farm successors or one of the farmers. So if we want to protect the farm, get the most amount of protection, we push it over, we get our prenup in place. Oftentimes, shortly after the marriage, we get a will in place that says what we will leave to the spouse. And it's not saying we're not going to leave him anything. It's, again, saying we don't have to leave you the farm. We don't have to make the farm a target in the event of a divorce. So if you've liked what you've heard, follow me on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and check out farmlawyer.com.